The more you remember, the smarter you are. We have been taught this powerful myth for years, and we are made to believe this myth. Think of a man who memorized over 12,000 books and could read 2 pages simultaneously, one with his left eye and another with his right. His name was Kim Peek. If he read once, he could remember almost all of it. This is a perfect recall. He was a living encyclopedia. He could tell you the day of the week for any date in history. Such a kind of powerful memory he had. But in spite of all the memory, his understanding was limited. He struggled with basic logic. He couldn't find connection between ideas. He couldn't see why behind what he knew. He had the world's greatest hard drive, but the processor was missing. His brain could process massive detail, but couldn't transform it into understanding. That's what a savant like memory often looks. Such savants will have powerful storage, but they will have limited processing capacity. Now, contrast this with Isaac Newton. Newton did not try to remember everything he learned. His mind worked differently. It selected ideas, combined them. He didn't remember more information. He built a relationship between ideas. He could see connections where other people were not able to see, and those connections made his thinking more powerful. This is why photographic memory should not be the goal of a learner. But intelligence is not about how much you can store, but how deeply you can structure what you know. Newton was famously absent minded. He once invited a friend to dinner and went to get a bottle of wine and got so lost in the thought that he forgot his guest entirely. He did not remember even trivial detail. This shows that his mind is active in processing information than storing. He could look at a falling apple and a revolving moon and see a hidden connection that changed the world. So here one man stored the information, the other transformed it. In our current educational climate, we have made a dangerous mistake. We have equated memory with intelligence. But as a researcher in biolinguistics and neuroscience, I can tell you these two are not just different, they are often in competition. Today we are going to debunk the intelligence myth. To understand the gap between Kim and Isaac Newton, we have to look at the three systems in your brain that turn experience into knowledge. The first system is the posterior system. This is the entry point for any information. This is located at the back of your brain, and this is highlighted in green color in the image. This system is responsible for basic processing. It's where you recognize shapes, sounds, and text. When you cram for an exam, you are essentially stuffing the posterior system. If you store information only in the posterior region, you can repeat the words, but you cannot own them. At this stage, information is shallow and disconnected. And at this point, you recognize the information, but you don't understand it yet. And the second system is the prefrontal cortex. This is also called the executive processor. When you process any information, the prefrontal cortex becomes active, and this is highlighted in blue in the image. This is where real intelligence is born. In biolinguistics, we study the prefrontal cortex because it allows for recursion, the ability to take two separate ideas and combine them into a third. This is how you generate newer ideas. When two ideas are connected, your prefrontal cortex will help you to generate newer ideas. The prefrontal cortex is like a director of a film. It does not just record the scene, it decides what it means. It filters out the noise and asks why and forces the brain to find a pattern. Without the prefrontal cortex, you are just a recorder. With it, you are a thinker. And the third system is the hippocampus. The processed information is stored in the hippocampus. And in the image, I have highlighted this in violet. The hippocampus takes the meaning produced by the prefrontal cortex and organizes it into a structured long-term memory. But true learning is not just sending data to hippocampus. True learning depends on the strength of the conversation between your thinking and your memory. The strength of the conversation between the prefrontal cortex and the posterior region. The prefrontal cortex asks, does this make sense? How does this connect? And the hippocampus stores those connections. If that conversation is weak, you get memory without understanding. And if that conversation is strong, you get intelligence. This is why someone like Kim P could store enormous detail but struggle to use it, and why Isaac Newton could ignore most things yet transform a few ideas into something world changing. You should know how we can train our brains to be like Newton's. We have to stop taking in information without thinking and start working out. Real learning is a conscious decision to invest in thinking. Instead of asking, what did I read? Ask, what is missing here? What did the author not explain here in this passage? What are the assumptions? The moment you look for the gap, your brain stops passively recording and starts evaluating ideas. That is your prefrontal cortex building deep structural bridges. For every fact you learn, ask, why does this work this way? If you learn about the hippocampus, don't just memorize its location. Ask, why did evolution place the memory center so close to the emotional center? Linking new information to prior knowledge is the only way to build relational understanding. When you hit a concept you don't understand, don't just reread it. Make the problem visible. Say out loud, I understand part A, but I don't see how it leads to part B. By verbalizing the struggle, you shift the task from autopilot back into the conscious control of your prefrontal cortex. This is where neuroplasticity actually happens. You are literally reshaping your brain. Actually, we live in an age of AI. We now have machines that can store and retrieve every piece of information ever written. If your goal is simply to be a storage device, you are competing with the machine you can never beat. What sets us apart is our ability to synthesize ideas, our ability to find gaps, see new perspectives, and continuously reshape our understanding. So, my advice to you is don't aim for a photographic memory. Aim for a processed memory. Stop trying to fill your mind. Start training your brain to think with what it knows. Because in the end, it's not how much you remember that matters, it's what you do with it. Thank you for watching.